All right. Thank you, Mr. Norbert, for this opportunity to talk to you. It's always an honor here to talk with different people and hear their own side of the story because basically we are all in the journey in this life. So it is important that from time to time we share so that some other persons can also learn from us. All right, so we're going to be spending this time, this maybe 1 or 2 hours. I don't know how long we're going to spend here, looking at your history, where you have worked, and all these different good things. So let's start with your self presentation.
Let me thank you for letting me share my thoughts here on this webcast. I really appreciate that. So thank you very much, Ray. I'm a professional. I have my background is engineering. I actually studied chemistry in Germany, and but I have spent most of my career working in the United States. I worked actually 39 years for Goodyear as in various roles in the innovation center at Goodyear, but I had global responsibility for a long time for 3 innovation centers, one in the United States, one in Luxembourg, and one in Germany. And I was quite fortunate because the last 15 years of my career, I was asked, or mainly it was also a lot my own idea, to go and look what made other companies so successful. And one of them that we paid a lot of attention to was Toyota. And Toyota has implemented what they call lean manufacturing in their plants. And virtually all automotive companies and many other companies in the world jumped on that system, jumped on what they learned from Toyota and many other Japanese companies. And I was fortunate to have an opportunity to try to apply that same thinking to the way how we do innovation, to the way how we develop new products. And it worked very well. And I was also given the opportunity then to share what I learned in that time in a book that I published. It's called Lean Driven Innovation. And by the way, I wrote that book when after I broke my leg. I couldn't walk. I had a skiing accident and I could not walk for a whole year. So I had a lot of time on my hands, and that's when I wrote that book. And now COVID comes along, and same situation again. I'm stuck at home for a long time. So I figured, well, there's still so much in my head. There's still so much that I learned in my career that I have not shared with the rest of the world. So I have submitted the script for a second book, which kind of goes a lot further than my first book, but the subject is still the same. How can we get much better at doing innovation? How can companies get much better at bringing out new products and actually making money on those new products and grow their business and become leaders in their industry? So that the COVID actually gave me an opportunity to further. I'm doing consulting work. I did a lot of consulting work actually before COVID, but of course COVID has completely stopped. Well, not completely, but has reduced that work tremendously. I don't travel, and a lot of companies just have other stuff to worry about than what I have been able to teach them. I do some workshops, but not so much. So again, a very welcome opportunity to sit down and put my thoughts on paper. The script is with the publisher, but the book isn't printed yet. So.
All right, that's
That's
interesting.
in a nutshell what I've been doing the last few years. So.
That's interesting, and really, it's quite a lot. Of course, in the course of this podcast, we are going to have time to look at it one after the other. We would like to know from the beginning when you were born and when you were growing up as a boy. Tell
Oh,
us
yeah.
more about that. That is very interesting.
But that was some long time ago, Obehi, unfortunately. But yeah, I was born in Luxembourg, and I grew up on a farm, on a very small farm, and I was one of the baby boomers. I was born right after they started to recover from World War II. My parents and the village and so on was hit very, very, very hard in the war. And in fact, they had just, I was born right after they had been able to rebuild the houses and rebuild their lives to a good extent. Um, the, the the 50s were a little hard. The 60s became a very good time in Europe. I went to school in Luxembourg, did my high school in Luxembourg, did my grade school, well, I learned Luxembourgish as a kid, of course, did my grade school in Luxembourg in German, in the German language. Then I went to high school and it switched to French. High school in Luxembourg is taught largely in the French language. And after that, after I did my baccalaureate in Luxembourg, I went to college in Germany. I had decided to study chemistry, and Germany is, at least at that time, was an excellent country to go study chemistry. And so I spent 6 years living in Germany, studying and working there a little bit, and then I hired in with Goodyear in Luxembourg. They have an innovation center in Luxembourg, and that's where I worked a few years. And in the 80s, things in Luxembourg were not doing very well. There was a very, very serious crisis. It was a global crisis, but Luxembourg was hit very, very hard because the only really big industry that Luxembourg had was the steel industry, and the steel industry took a huge big hit at that time. And it was actually a very good time to go and move and learn other experiences. So I had the opportunity to go to the United States, but then I got kind of stuck there. I was working on a very, very big project, actually an innovation project that had discretionary funding by the company. And so I got kind of, I say stuck, but on the other side, it was okay to get stuck here in the United States. And now I live in Ohio. Actually, I live in Akron, Ohio, which is still the home of the rubber industry. And but I also spend a lot of time now in Florida. It's much warmer in Florida in the winter, so I enjoy, since I'm retired now, to spend more time in the winter in the warmer part of the United States.
Interesting. I will ask you one question relating to your early years before we move to the current situation. Of course, your work and some of the situation there. So when you were growing up, you grew up. You were born in the 50s, if I'm not wrong on
That
that.
is accurate, yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you were in the 50s. Of course, the war has ended. Now, did you had a chance to maybe have some curiosity with your parents, like asking them their experience of the war because they were physically there, they saw what happened. What did they tell you
Yes.
about the war? What was your experience in those times?
Well, my first experience is that they did not talk about it is something that I experienced a lot. The people who had lived through the war, especially Luxembourg, very hard. What had put it like that? In the At the beginning of the war, Luxembourg was occupied. Of course, that little country couldn't resist at all. There was virtually no resistance. The country was just occupied by the Germans, and the Germans established their rule in the country. Some of my relatives were forced to go and join the German army. My dad was the only worker on a farm and the only male on the farm. So he was spared from being forced into the service because the Germans knew very well that they needed the farms to grow food. Of course, the farms were obligated to donate what was it, 80 or 90% of what they produced. They had to give it to the German army. So my dad did not have to go fight, but there was the German occupation during the war, which was very, very hard on their sisters and she was had to take care of them at a very, very early age. And still living, they weren't married at that time. She was living in a different village. But then what happened after the Battle of the Bulge, when the Germans tried to push forward back into towards the to stop the Allies from coming in from the Normandy. A big battle was fought in Bastogne, which is kind of very close to where I grew up. And what happened is the Allies pushed the Germans back, and that happened to be straight through the village where I grew up. So the house where I grew up was actually completely destroyed. There was nothing left of virtually nothing left of the house. It was completely bombed. My parents survived. They were in a shelter in the same village, not very far away from that. They did survive the bombing, but they had lost everything they had. There was reparations were done. They got help rebuilding their house, but they had lost everything else. The cattle, everything. I don't know. They never knew what happened, so they may have been the Germans may have been smart enough to let them go. They knew the place would get bombed because they were hiding there. It was a difficult time, a very difficult time for them. They had to live with relatives for a while because they had no home anymore, and then starting to rebuild the farm. Of course, they still had their land, but they didn't have any animals anymore, so they had to start pretty much from scratch there.